Showtime! The Capital G Show starts right now.
What's up YouTube, Capital G here, talking best decks for the new format in this video. With our sudden and shocking most recent ban list update, we are officially moving into a new format, one where extra linking should be incredibly difficult, FTKs rarely rear their ugly heads, and normal summons don't just result in, I don't have a hand trap, GG, let's go to the next game. With one of the most shocking bans of all time in Firewall Dragon, this new format actually looks pretty promising, and a couple of cards aside, we might actually get to play some Yu-Gi-Oh for the first time in a couple of months. With YCS Milan scheduled for just a few days after the start of this new format, things will be heating up incredibly fast, and this meta is sure to develop right away. So once again, I have decided to list my picks for the best decks of the upcoming meta. I've decided to include cards and archetypes that will be released up until the end of January, as that will be the next time that the FNL list is eligible for an update, so I think that kind of makes sense. I've also decided to only go top 5 in this video with some honorable mentions, mainly I think because in a Yu-Gi-Oh format, it's just really unrealistic to expect to have more than 7 relevant meta decks. Everything is kind of just more so rogue at best when you look outside of that. With the introductions out of the way, welcome to the top 5 Yu-Gi-Oh decks for the December 3rd, 2018 format, the Yu-Gi-Oh hierarchy. Number 5, Cyber Dragon. I had a really tough time picking between this deck and ABC, but ultimately I chose Cyber Dragon, not just because we saw the deck make top 8 at the most recent YCS in Pasadena, so we already know what type of power it has, but also I think without a doubt, Cyber Dragon continues to be the best go second deck in the entire game, and that's where I think it would have a huge advantage in comparison to something like ABC, whether it be easily being able to out big strong link boards with the contact fusion for Mega Fleet Dragon, or using that same tactic to deal with those problematic floating Sky Striker link monsters, which will not actually activate in that case. Cyber Dragons in general can just deal with big boss monsters with the greatest of ease. This can also include cards like Thunder Dragon Colossus that are not in the extra monster zone by playing cards like Evenly Match, which of course works naturally because the deck wants to go second anyways. Speaking of such, Evenly Match is a huge blowout card against the likes of Altergeist, Sky Strikers, and the aforementioned Thunder Dragons, considering the ceiling of the Go First combo decks was lowered significantly with the banning of Firewall Dragon. Going second is looking a tad more appealing, and there is no better Go Second deck in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh than Cyber Dragons. Number 4, Altergeist. Anytime combo decks as a whole lose some power and consistency to the ban list, it's always going to help control decks, and I believe that Altergeist have fully proven themselves to be one of the premier control decks in the meta, bolstering an ironclad defense with a mix of powerful disruptive monsters like Altergeist Sequidius, Hextia, and Conquori, combined with the all-powerful Altergeist Protocol. This deck is one that can strangle and constrict the opponent, slowly limiting their options one by one until they ultimately don't have any good plays left to make. Because of floating monsters like Altergeist Miluseek and Sequidius, the deck can grind extremely well. In fact, this is what it specializes in. And also, don't disregard the lack of non-targetable boss monsters in the meta. A couple of metas ago, cards like Borolo Dragon and Masterpiece were much more prominent factors, and Altergeist, Miluseek, and Sequidius removal effects didn't do much to actually kill those monsters. However, right now, because everybody's in love with a different Boro Link monster that is completely susceptible to cards like these and can be targeted by Altergeist Concordia as well, this means that there really isn't a big problematic boss monster that they can't handle without going into the extra deck. Altergeist is a super solid deck all around, but there is a better and more consistent pure control deck to be found in the meta, and it's on this list. Number 3, Thunder Dragon. I actually think that Altergeist is probably the better all-around deck when you compare it to Thunder Dragon, but the most important matchups right now just straight up favor Thunder Dragon, and I have no doubt that it's going to be the more popular of the two decks. For starters, Thunder Dragon Colossus has proven since the release of Soul Fusion it's good enough to just carry the deck to victory when the expected best deck in the meta needs to search a ton of cards in its first turn to make up for its low monster count, and you can easily put this boss monster on the field to shut down all of that, you're going to have yourself a pretty good time. In addition, with ABC being back to full power, you have another deck added to the meta mix, much like Trickstar, that not only runs multiple copies of Terraforming to get to the deck's field spell, but a deck that also needs that field spell to get going. The more that these decks need the Surge, the better Thunder Dragon Colossus is going to be as a card and really a boss monster in the meta. The fact that you can drop multiples of it in the first turn make things like Widow Anchor and Infinite Impermanence moot points, because your opponent's not going to be able to out both of them with a single copy of that card. Thunder Dragons are also known to run evenly matched when going second, so don't think just because you go first that you're out of the woods yet when they don't have Colossus on the field. The deck has excellent offense. I think its defense is a little less than stellar, but it has a godly boss monster that can be one of the best in the meta. Number 2, Dark Warrior. I feel like this is the deck that Goki players should naturally transition to. Your core opening plays are very similar, i.e. get to Isolde as quickly as possible, and there really isn't much that Goki can do that this deck can't. However, there are things that this deck can do that Goki really doesn't do, or at least doesn't do very well. The main thing, of course, being number 86, which in my opinion is actually superior to a Gumblar Extra Link. While it is uncommon, I've seen dozens of times that Gumblar for 4 extra links have been broken and the Goki player always loses. On the other hand, I have yet to see a player actually lose when they get number 86 out with 6+ materials. At that point, the opponent really can't do anything because it's basically a towers, multiplied by 10 when it comes to the power. It's unaffected by everything. It stops your opponent from kaijuing it. Your opponent really can't play defense because it nukes their board every turn and they just can't summon altogether. Another benefit of the Dark Warrior deck is while you're comboing, you can actually accrue defensive cards like the Phantom Knight's Fogblade. If the number 86 play isn't possible, that can be a valuable resource. This deck can also use the same magical midfield breaker strategy that Goki could employ as well to stop your opponent's impermanences and other hand traps like Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. While Goki is still a deck that has some incredibly strong plays, I personally feel like number 86 is the strongest play in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh right now, outside of just outright FTKing your opponent, and this is the deck that I personally believe does it the best. My honorable mentions include ABC and Trickstar, and because I need to fill up 10 minutes of time, we're going to give both of them full-on segments in this video. Many have forgotten just how powerful ABC as an archetype is. I think a lot of it has to do with Buster Dragon. It's not just the crazy stats on that thing, but the built-in removal and its ability to tag out to avoid removal cards, which can be really invaluable against decks like Sky Striker and Ultrageist because they have a lot of single target removal. I actually think that Dragon Buster is going to probably be right next to something like Thunder Dragon Colossus as the second boss monster of the entire format, right under number 86. Also, with there being so many good generic Link monsters released as of late, it feels like ABC just continue to get more and more options, and the deck is really just getting better. Don't forget that the ABC pieces themselves do not have any hard once per turns on their effects, so they actually work insanely well when it comes to Link summoning. I think if you're going first, Dragon Buster is one of the strongest plays in the meta. Summoning that thing puts a serious pain in your opponent's ass because it is a problem to deal with. My biggest concern with ABC is really when the deck has to go second. When it comes to Trickstars, it's actually a little surprising. The deck has been hanging around the top competitive decks in the recent months. I think a lot of its success has been borrowed from other decks. The additions of things like Mind Control and Cyber Dragon actually gives the deck some strong go second plays. You can just straight up take boss monsters like Colossus or the Sky Striker Links, or you can contact fusion with them, which also gets the job done. Trickstars are one of the decks that excel the most at doing huge amounts of damage with minimal resources because your field spell is not only a rota, but it amplifies your damage, and Lycoris can tag out during the battle phase, giving you even more damage and also guaranteeing that you do burn damage during your opponent's draw phase. The deck's reliance on Scapegoat for proactive plays has been all but eliminated at this point. I think that Trickstars can still struggle to get over some, even mid-sized monsters that are about 2,000 attack or higher because we don't have Trickstar Caribbean in the TCG, and the monsters pretty much do cap out at 1,800 attack. And finally, to our number one, Sky Striker. I think it's fairly obvious that Sky Striker should be here and is generally thought of as the top deck going into next format. Shockingly, Sky Striker received not a single hit on the Forbidden and Limited list, and when you're playing a pure variant, Hornet Drones being limited really didn't do all that much to hurt your consistency. Sky Strikers are without a doubt the most consistent deck in Yu-Gi-Oh right now, mainly because Sky Strikers have so many cards to get them to their core pieces, and this is a deck that actually excels going first or second in my opinion. Going first, you obviously have the ability to get a search from Shizuku during your end phase, plus you have Sky Striker multi-roll to let you reuse all the cards that you used that turn. But even going second, because the deck has so many expendable cards that are just 1-for-1 removal, like Afterburner, Jamming Wave, or even in a lot of circumstances, something like the Sky Striker Widow Anchor, which you take your opponent's monster and you use one of your cards to pop that monster as kind of like fodder for your field spell or whatever. I think that the deck can really break established boards fairly easily. This deck does happen to have one Achilles heel in my opinion, and that is the fact that it can struggle with huge non-targetable monsters, but right now there just aren't that many of them in the meta. I think that this deck also handles being hand trapped extremely well, and I feel like only Droll and Lockbird really clamps down on them. The deck lacks offense, but its grind game and consistency more than make up for it. So that was my list. Of course, you guys let me know what your thoughts in the comment section below. Were there some decks that you think should have been on here, or maybe you thought the order was all jacked up? I actually am thinking of doing a budget video because there were a bunch of other decks that I really did consider for this list, but I'm really only going to make that if you guys want to see that. If you do want to see top 5 budget decks of the format, please let me know in the comment section below as well. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.